Tonight, thousands mourn a Hamas leader as tensions in the Middle East mount. Also tonight, police investigate another arson attack in Melbourne. Floods and fires send insurance premiums skyrocketing. And cap in hand, but will David Warner get another chance at bat? Good evening, Iskhander Razak with ABC News. Thousands of people have attended the funeral of the Hamas kingpin who was killed in a drone strike earlier in the week. The assassination has stoked the fury of the Lebanese militia who have vowed to retaliate. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is travelling to Israel in the wake of the strike.
Thousands took to the streets of Beirut for Salah al-Aruri's funeral. The first targeted assassination of a Hamas leader outside Palestinian territory since the conflict started in October.
This is a referendum to all Palestinian people who have become part of the resistance.
They marched in an act of defiance against Israel and its ongoing war in Gaza.
Whatever they do, as much as they kill, we are continuing on this path.
At the same time, Israel continues to target Hezbollah cells, launching rockets towards its territory from Lebanon.
The less safe I feel is right here on the road.
But Israelis like Daniela Porat-Penso are waiting and hoping to return home, evacuated to a hotel from her kibbutz just over a kilometre from the Lebanese border.
It's scary, I must say, and we need to be sure that we're safe in order to come and live here again in our homes. So this is our request from our government, from our army. Please make us safe.
We'll apply maximum power with maximum precision everywhere that's needed.
And we have your back.
Thank you.
The Israeli PM met with US officials, pledging what he called a fundamental change to the border with Lebanon and promising evacuated Israelis they would go home. Benjamin Netanyahu didn't specify what that plan would entail, but Israel's defence minister has laid out his vision for Gaza, proposing Israel will keep security control while a Palestinian body runs day-to-day administration and a coalition of other countries oversees a rebuild, all dependent on when or if Israel defeats Hamas. Alison Horn, ABC News, Jerusalem.
The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for bombings in southern Iran, which killed at least 80 people. Two blasts struck crowds commemorating 4 years since the assassination of a top Iranian commander in a US drone strike. General Soleimani's militia fought against the terrorist network in Iraq for years. On its social media channel, IS said a suicide bomber detonated explosives among the gathering, while another perpetrator triggered a bomb 20 minutes later. Iran's leaders initially blamed Israel and the US and vowed revenge. Melbourne police are investigating if an arson attack on an ice cream shop in Williamstown overnight has links to other recent fires in the area. The blaze took hold of the Capriccio Gelato shop on Nelson Place at Williamstown just before 4 a.m. Police believe offenders damaged the front of the business before setting it alight. 16 firefighters worked to bring the blaze under control. The shop is metres from another ice cream shop that was firebombed multiple times late last year. A 27-year-old Moorabbin man has fronted court charged with the daylight murder of a man in Hampton East. Appearing via video link, Harrison Hilton Taylor smiled occasionally but did not apply for bail. He's accused of killing a 46-year-old Hampton man who was found injured on the side of the road just after midday on Tuesday. Police say the men did not know each other and officers want to speak to any witnesses. Mr. Hilton Taylor will face court again in May. Businesses in far north Queensland are getting back to normal. All they now need are the tourists. Travellers are being lured to the cyclone-ravaged region with the promise of cheap airfares and accommodation. As Queensland recovers from natural disasters at opposite ends of the state, the government has put a figure on the damage bill for the first time. That figure, at least $2 billion.
First, the devastation. Now, the help.
Great to have you here, guys.
The Premier and his entourage arrived with one key message.
Cairns and Port Douglas are open for business.
We are open for business here in Cairns and Port Douglas.
Our region is open.
3 weeks after Cyclone Jasper ravaged the region, the focus is on financial recovery.
Nearly 90% of businesses are open and ready to take visitors. What we need now is those visitors.
To help get them there, the Queensland and federal governments are subsidising cheap airfares and discounted accommodation, hoping to prevent further damage to an industry that's already lost $250 million.
We missed out on our peak season. We were looking at running into 100% occupancies just before Jasper and the flooding. That dropped away to 40s and 50% occupancies.
But with some major roads in the far north still cut, places like Cape Tribulation remain off limits.
We survive in this little community largely on tourism, and there have been no tourists here. The few that were here have very quickly left on boats, so the community is essentially ground to a standstill.
And in the state's southeast, where a tornado tore through buildings, businesses say they're on the brink. Mount Tambourine Gallery owner Pam Gill bought her own generator and says the government's offer of disaster loans is an insult.
Who wants to borrow more money? I mean, but that's not going to help anybody. It's just digging a bigger hole. That's not assistance.
At a call centre in Brisbane, the government's bolstered the number of staff processing emergency hardship grants. Nearly $11 million has been paid out to 61,000 people. But that's just a small part of the total bill.
The combined economic impact and the cost of recovery is $2 billion across the state. But these are very early days.
And as more damage is revealed, that figure's only going to rise. Simon Cullen, ABC News, Brisbane.
And floods and fires have sent insurance premiums skyrocketing, forcing many consumers to choose between cover and essentials amid the cost of living crisis. Experts say millions of households are paying at least 1 month's salary for premiums.
Fran Ross was stunned when she got her latest home insurance renewal.
I felt absolutely sick to my stomach. I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to deal with this.
The Brisbane resident faced a 400% increase to her premium, a fifth of her weekly age pension.
I would have expected a slight increase, but that was absolutely extreme.
Experts say many families are being priced out.
That's getting to the stage of unaffordable or extreme insurance stress. In fact, 1.24 million, or 1 in 8 Australian households, is now facing at least 4 weeks of gross household income to buy a meaningful house insurance premium.
Over the previous 12 months, what we found was that the median household in Australia was facing a 28% increase in home insurance premiums. That's the largest I've seen in 20 years.
Severe flood events in 2022 have left insurers stretched, and they've passed on costs. Inflated premiums aren't expected to subside for some time.
We are facing a future with increasing natural disasters due to climate change, and can expect that unless we have rapid emissions reductions, that those costs will carry on increasing.
We need people moved away from high cost, high exposure areas if we're going to bring the price down, and that's a really long-term proposition. I think we all have to accept insurance is up a lot more, and that's here to stay for a while.
The ABC has spoken to numerous Queensland residents with similar stories to Ms Ross's, facing insurance hikes of anywhere from 30 to more than 100%. It's left many people wondering whether it's a safety net they can afford to live without.
I hate the thought of having to go without insurance.
Alex Brewster, ABC News Brisbane.
A 29-year-old man has been arrested for allegedly sexually assaulting a woman in an aged care facility on the New South Wales North Coast. Hayden Carl Skinner is accused of breaking into the 76-year-old's room in Coffs Harbour before assaulting her in the early hours of New Year's Day. Police say she fought back, kicking her attacker in the groin and scratching his face. She was taken to hospital with minor injuries and is now in the care of her family. The man was arrested yesterday afternoon and appeared in court today. He did not apply for bail and will return to court on Monday.
It's horrendous. An attack on a person in the safety of their home, in their own bed, is horrendous anyway. But to break into a nursing home, you are only going to find vulnerable people living there.
Fire crews are investigating whether an electric bike battery caused a major blaze in Sydney's inner west. The factory in Croydon was destroyed in the blaze. No one was injured, but heavy smoke filled the area for most of the morning.
The screaming of sirens and the smell of smoke woke many in this suburban neighbourhood.
Certainly could smell it. And then I went down to my local cafe, which is down there, and people said, yeah, there's a fire out here.
You heard a few pops, and then the whole place was on ablaze. Within minutes, that whole place went up in flames.
It's definitely something interesting to see this early in the morning.
Around 5 o'clock, fire crews rushed to this warehouse in Croydon. They spent several hours battling the blaze.
A lot of surrounding residents under threat initially at the time that were evacuated, but we've managed to contain it and stop further spread.
Nearby residents were left without power for most of the day. The e-bike shop inside the warehouse was destroyed. Fire and rescue say the exact cause of the blaze is yet to be determined. Given the factory was full of electric bikes and scooters, crews say they'll be investigating whether lithium-ion batteries might have caused the ignition. When the batteries that power e-bikes and e-scooters are left on charges for too long or overheat, they can ignite. Around 200 fires were caused by lithium-ion batteries in New South Wales last year. Crews say these blazes are difficult to extinguish.
They maintain a lot of heat when they're on fire. They don't go out as easily as other fuel sources where, you know, once they cool down, they remain cooled down and it stops any further ignition sources. Lithium batteries maintain a high level of heat.
With e-bikes becoming more popular, fire and rescue say they're researching new ways to tackle lithium battery fires. Helena Burke, ABC News, Sydney.
Well, David Warner's missing baggy green cap is back in his hands after disappearing before his final test appearance for Australia. A couple of hours before play got underway today in the third test, Warner announced the special item had been found. The third day of the pink cricket test in Sydney is always Jane McGrath Day, a breast cancer fundraiser named in honour of the late wife of cricketing great Glenn McGrath. This year was one of the biggest and brightest turnouts ever.
On the pinkest day of the test in Sydney came a baggy green miracle.
I am pleased and relieved that I've got my baggy back in my hands. Any cricketer knows how special their cap is, and I'll cherish this for the rest of my life.
On the eve of the test, David Warner made an impassioned plea for the return of the precious cargo after it went missing in transit. Cricket Australia says it was found packed in a bag at the team's Sydney hotel.
This is something that can't be bought in a shop. It's got to be earned. David Warner has earned it. This is a wonderful send-off here at the SCG.
The armchair experts were a little more brutal, blaming the missing merch for the outgoing opener's less than ideal start to the test.
If they found it first, you might have scored a ton.
From police ponies in pink to patriotic patrons, the SCG was looking blush.
Why not dress up, get amongst it, and all for a good cause?
The McGrath Foundation's goal is to provide all breast cancer patients with support.
Every family, every individual going through breast cancer has access to the free care of a breast care nurse where they live.
Patients say that's invaluable.
It wasn't until I had Charlotte that, you learn more about what each of them is and why is your treatment different to someone else's.
It's been 16 years since the first Jane McGrath Day. In that time, it's grown enormously. Its success is something Glenn McGrath says Jane would have been thrilled with.
To see the whole SCG awash in pink, to see the crowd turn up in pink the way they have, has turned this into a very special event.
The official morning tea fundraiser was the biggest one yet. Even politicians put regular colours aside. Penny Timms, ABC News, Sydney.
The death toll from a powerful earthquake that struck central Japan on New Year's Day has risen to 84 people, with almost 180 still missing, including a teenaged boy. Rescue workers are still combing through rubble and damaged houses, but hopes are fading of finding survivors due to freezing temperatures and aftershocks. In Ishikawa Prefecture, more than 33,000 people are in evacuation shelters where food and heating is limited. Most historic buildings in Wajima were destroyed or incinerated in the quake. The mayor says the fishing town is still short of supplies. There's no running water and roads are cut off. Europe and the UK have been battling extreme weather conditions, with flooding and bitterly cold conditions sweeping across parts of the continent. Hundreds of motorists were stuck overnight in Sweden, where heavy snow and icy conditions caused mass traffic jams.
Northern Sweden is shivering through extreme conditions, with power outages in towns cut off by heavy snow.
I got up to see how cold it was, and it was minus 38, so the only thing to do was fire up the stove.
The army was called in to help the 1,000 trapped truck drivers stuck on the main highways. The cold wave hit Finland too, with Lapland in the grip of a record-breaking minus 43 degrees. Temperature records also tumbled in Estonia as parts of the country turned into a winter wonderland.
It's very cold. After half an hour, it's not possible to walk anymore.
Further south, Belgium is reeling from a tornado that left dozens of homes uninhabitable.
Suddenly it was pitch black. Everything started to blow. It was terribly noisy. I thought it was a gigantic hailstorm. There was so much noise.
The Belgian lowlands were hit by floods after a spate of heavy downpours. In neighbouring Germany, some farmers are facing what they say is unprecedented flooding. The Chancellor taking time out to inspect the damage and promising more government support. In northern France, residents were rescued from inundated homes in the historic town of Arques. This region has been flooded twice in the last 2 months, and market gardeners are feeling desperate seeing their crops destroyed.
The tomatoes are completely ruined.
Across the Channel, more than 250 flood warnings were issued in England, and hundreds of householders were ordered to evacuate.
You can normally keep it at bay with floodgates and things like that. About 9:30 this morning, we realised it was going to rise a lot quicker and faster and deeper than predicted.
Water levels on the River Trent in the East Midlands were at 20-year highs. In the south, residents battling inundation couldn't raise help.
Police aren't interested in closing the road, despite the fact I'm amazed there hasn't been an accident. Fire brigade not interested, no one's interested.
Multiple train services were cancelled across the country, and parts of eastern England recorded nearly the entire average rainfall for January in just the first few days of the month. Jenny Lavelle, ABC News.
Disgraced Paralympian Oscar Pistorius has been released from his South African prison 11 years after murdering his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp. The convicted killer was granted parole and will remain under supervision at his uncle's house until his sentence expires in December 2029. South African authorities say he is banned from conducting any media interviews until his parole is up. To finance, and a key component of our energy transition is stalling. Here's Daniel Ziffer.
We need lithium for things like batteries for electric vehicles, and Australia became about the best in the world at digging it up. So why has Core Lithium paused operations at its Northern Territory mine, which only opened a year and a bit ago? Well, check out the collapse in the price of lithium. Down more than 85% in the past year, it's fallen in half since the end of October. That mightn't make sense with electric vehicles booming and an energy transition that needs batteries, but there's a glut of the stuff. Expect it to be a bit like old gold mines. They're currently reopening as gold prices hit record highs. And as demand increases, the lithium mine will likely shake off the cobwebs and keep digging. Core Lithium slumped today, the overall ASX market down a touch, 1.7% lower for the shortened first week of trading for 2024. European inflation was in line with what people expected there, and that buoyed those markets, and the value of our dollar went nowhere against the US in trading today. And you've got to love the French. Their second biggest grocer, Carrefour, has booted Pepsi products off its shelves due to what it calls unacceptable price rises. Earlier, it protested what's called shrinkflation by putting this sign next to products where the volume or weight fell, meaning it got smaller, and thus the price effectively rose. With our tight duopoly, don't expect it to happen here. And that's finance.
Rafael Nadal's comeback will continue tonight in Brisbane after the 22-time Grand Slam champion stormed past Queenslander Jason Kubler into the quarterfinals. The Spanish star had the sold-out Pat Rafter crowd entertained, but not just by his tennis.
Another win, another statement made. This time it took just 83 minutes.
The comeback continues.
Brisbane's Jason Kubler, no match for Rafa.
Oh, one of the hardest shots in the game. He makes it look easy.
The only thing to faze the 37-year-old, a time violation from the umpire for taking too long at the bathroom between sets.
Honestly, Brisbane is very humid, and I had to change every single piece.
Nothing will happen. You have to give me. Why?
I thought it was on time, honestly. No, then he told me I was 4 seconds late. I don't know if it was me. I don't think so in that time, but something happened in the period of time. But I am slow, I know that, and I'm going to keep trying to improve in 2024.
34-year-old Victoria Azarenka isn't taking a step back this year.
That's aggressive.
Yelena Ostapenko sending it to a deciding third set.
The ride continues.
After 2.5 hours, Brisbane's first semi-finalist emerged.
The most magnificent of matches.
Well, with Yelena, sometimes you just have to put on helmet and try to like stay in there. But she's an incredible player.
Australian James Duckworth made the men's #1 seed work for his place in the semi-final.
From wide, gets it done. There it is. Holgeruna.
In the United Cup, France is through to the semi-finals after surviving over Norway 2-1 in a marathon 6.5-hour contest. Jessica Stewart, ABC News.
Back to the pink test, and the match between Australia and Pakistan has swung dramatically after the home team collapsed to give the tourists a narrow first innings lead. But Josh Hazlewood led a dramatic fight back with 4 wickets to set up a likely series whitewash for Australia tomorrow.
A day of wildly fluctuating fortune started almost sedately as Marnus Labuschagne looked to set a platform.
That is classy and elegant.
His mentor also looked in good touch.
Delightful.
Not so Pakistan's fielders.
That's his knee is dug in there.
It wasn't the only mishap.
Oh, what's going on there? That was ridiculous.
Labuschagne brought up a patient 50.
Nice shot from Marnus, and this is going to race through to the fence for 4.
A distracted Steve Smith held up play for almost 5 minutes as ground staff scrambled to remove a ball of tape on the sight screen.
That's it. Raise your arms.
He was out soon after for 38, hitting straight into a stacked offside field.
Can you believe it? He's fallen for it.
The next over, Labuschagne was out for 60 to a stunner from Salman Agha.
Wow, what a ripper that is!
Travis Head made it to 10 before his miserable series continued.
How far is that going? Given out.
By contrast, Mitch Marsh is in rare touch, bringing up his 4th consecutive Test 50.
Another fine innings.
But he was out just 4 runs later to the bowling of Ahmed Jamal.
Ouch, just like that.
That triggered a collapse as Jamal took the last 4 wickets for just 6 runs to end up with 6 for the innings. Pakistan had a 14-run first innings lead, but almost immediately were in trouble thanks to a Mitch Starc special. Then, just like in the first innings, Josh Hazlewood struck in the very next over.
Throws the bat at it. Hazlewood gets his man. Edged. I don't believe what I'm seeing here.
And then picked up an astonishing 3 wickets in his last over to take his Test tally to 249 as Pakistan fell apart to be 7 for 68 at stumps. An Australian win tomorrow looks a formality. David Mark, ABC News, Sydney.
The Hobart Hurricanes remain in the hunt for a finals berth in the Big Bash League with a 6-wicket win over the Melbourne Renegades last night. The home side finished up at 4 for 147 after 20 overs, with English import Jordan Cox top scoring with 47. The Hurricanes chased down the total with 8 balls to spare. And in further retirement news from the cricketing world, Renegades veteran and former Australian one-day and T20 captain Aaron Finch announced before the match this season is his last.
Oh, I'm just getting old. That's about it. I mean, when you look around the competition and our side in particular, there's some great young players coming through, and I think now's the right time.
Melbourne United have asserted its dominance at the top of the NBL ladder with a 101-85-point win away from home over the Sydney Kings. After a tight first half, Melbourne broke away from the reigning back-to-back champions in the third quarter. Chris Goulding was instrumental in the win with 16 points. Boomers veteran Matthew Dellavedova added 16 as well, along with 9 assists. The fourth-place Kings have the chance to bounce back with a home game against Brisbane on Sunday. A painter from a tiny remote community in the Northern Territory has been invited to a renowned international art festival. Columboscope is held in Sri Lanka's most popular city, Colombo, which is filled with 5.5 million people and towering skyscrapers. It's a far cry from Nayu, the Indigenous community where Kiran Kadakpool was raised, which has a population of just 300.
These artworks are among the most sought after in the country, painted in this modest workshop in a tiny and remote NT community. The pieces have hung in galleries across Australia and caught the eye of global collectors, some fetching up to $30,000.
I've been painting since I was about 5 years old, from watching my family paint, like my mum, grandma and aunties.
Making it onto the international stage was always a dream.
Some of my family said it will happen one day, and now it's finally happening. I'm travelling overseas and I feel really happy about that, and my dreams came true.
Adding another chapter to his meteoric rise, this artist from Nauru is one of a select few artists from Australia chosen to exhibit work at Columboscope, a major art festival in Sri Lanka this month. His art telling stories of past generations.
Mostly it's based around like weaving, because I come from a long line of weavers, like my mother, grandmother and great-grandmother. And I used to sit around with them when I was little, watching them doing weaving.
Kiran will be travelling thousands of kilometres from the quiet streets of this tiny town to a city that's completely different.
Kiran's very well known now, and it's just he was selected through being well known.
The festival, another chance to promote his work.
It's a big deal for any artist in Australia, not just an artist from Daly River.
Going to be like an eye-opener to see what the buildings are like and the people and the culture over there.
Kiran will be exhibiting his collection at Columboscope from January 19. Roxanne Fitzgerald, ABC News.
To the weather. Overnight it was reasonably pleasant and relatively calm after the thunderstorms that hit the state earlier this week. It dropped as low as 10 at Mount Buller. Friday's been warm in the north of the state, hot in the far northwest and mild south of the ranges. Daytime temperatures were a little below the January average. Mildura was the hotspot with a high of 37 degrees. In Melbourne, we had a high of 29 at around 5 o'clock this afternoon. Outside right now, it's getting cooler. Interstate today, it was sunny in Perth, mostly sunny in Adelaide and Hobart, wet in Brisbane and showery in Darwin and Sydney. The satellite image shows cloud extending from southwest WA across the Bight and into Victoria. There's more cloud through central and inland parts of the country. A high in the Bight will drift eastwards towards the Tasman Sea overnight, and a low will develop over our far northwest later on Sunday. Heavy showers and storms are expected tomorrow in the tropics, the interior and western parts of the country, and showers in eastern Queensland. For the capital cities, it'll be sunny in Perth and Hobart, overcast in Sydney. Rain and a storm will develop in Adelaide, showers and a storm in Darwin. Back home, we're in for a mostly dry and sunny morning with a generally warm to hot day to follow. There's a chance of showers and a storm in the west, so watch out for that if you're anywhere from Warrnambool to Mildura. Elsewhere, highs of 30 forecast for Seymour and Lake Eildon. It'll be milder near the coast and in Gippsland with a few showers about the eastern ranges. On the bay, 20-knot east to southeasterlies will become variable and drop to around 10 knots in the morning, then turn east to southeasterly again to 15 knots late in the day, waves 1 metre. There's a strong wind warning for the east Gippsland coast that's been forecast. A warm and mostly sunny Saturday for Melbourne with a high of 31, down to 16 tonight. And looking ahead, Sunday, rain developing and the chance of a storm, 28 degrees. Monday, More rain with heavy falls and a storm possible. 25 Tuesday, cloudy and early rain. 24 degrees. Wednesday, partly cloudy. 24 degrees. Thursday, cloudy skies. 22. Friday, cloud clearing. 25 degrees expected. And that's it for this evening's bulletin. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow night from 7. Until then, stay safe, go well, and good night.